Multiple pressure points emerging right now out of the Middle East, where we are now 24 hours into the U.S. blockade of Iranian ports targeting Tehran's shipping through the Strait of Hormuz. The move, meant to apply economic pressure on Iran, is getting pushback from other countries who rely on this waterway, with Saudi Arabia, China, and France all calling for an end and a return to negotiations. This, as there are reports that communication between the U.S. and Iran is still ongoing, with another round of in-person talks in the next few days reportedly being considered after talks in Pakistan last weekend ended without a deal. Meanwhile, here in the U.S., Secretary of State Marco Rubio will be leading ceasefire talks between the U.S., Israel, and Lebanon today. It's the highest level of talks between these countries in over 30 years. Let's bring in MS Now senior national security reporter David Rohde, former Arab-Israeli negotiator at the State Department and senior fellow at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, Aaron David Miller, and retired U.S. Navy Vice Admiral Kevin Donegan. So, David, the U.S. and Iran reportedly are considering a second round of ceasefire talks. What more do we know about when and where this could happen, as the ceasefire now expires in just a matter of days?
Yeah, so two U.S. officials have told MS Now that the talks about possible new face-to-face meetings are ongoing, nothing definite yet. And then two Pakistani officials have told the Associated Press that they see the talks that began in Islamabad as the first of a series of meetings. So, again, nothing agreed to yet, but it seems like a possible scenario is another face-to-face meeting in Islamabad before the ceasefire expires. As you mentioned, the two-week ceasefire ends. It will end at midnight Monday, on Monday the 20th. So at 12:01 a.m. on Tuesday the 21st is when it ends, and that creates a deadline that I think puts pressure on both sides for an agreement. And I think the fact that there's even officials confirming these discussions means that some sort of progress is being made, but we won't know until they actually meet if there's a possible deal here.
Aaron, the president said yesterday the appropriate people in Iran have called. He says they want to make a deal. The vice president adding late on Fox News that the ball is in Iran's court to move talks forward. Do you see this as progress, that both sides appear to still be at the table?
I mean, I think the issues, things are on me, and it's great to be here. I think the issues are now clarified. The key issue on the surface is the Straits, but in reality, if the negotiations are going to focus on anything, it's going to be the nuclear issue. The vice president, when he did his presser coming out of his 21 hours of negotiation with the Iranians, referred to only one issue, the nuclear issue. And the administration has now put something on the table that fundamentally contradicts its previous positions, which is that there will be no uranium enrichment of uranium. They proposed a 20-year moratorium. And by the way, a moratorium is a pause, right? It's a cessation. It's not a permanent end. The Iranians have come back with a single-digit number, according to reporting, 5 years. I think that if that issue could somehow be narrowed and cracked, and you could come up with an issue on how to dilute the 60% of highly enriched uranium that is buried somewhere, probably near Isfahan, that you could actually imagine. I know it's hard to conceptualize and conceive it now. You could actually imagine the coming together of a deal, but it is going to require concessions from both sides so that each side would walk away as a winner. I don't think that's what the president's view of negotiations is. That's part of the problem.
Admiral, we are now 24 hours into the president's blockade of Iranian ports targeting Tehran's shipping through the Strait of Hormuz. China's foreign ministry this morning was critical of this blockade, calling it dangerous and irresponsible and warning it will aggravate tensions. What do you make of this blockade tactically? And at some point, do you see other countries getting involved?
Yeah, well, from an operational view right now, clearly the U.S. forces are postured. They have the right forces that they need to execute this, and don't expect to see them off the coast hovering over the ports of related to Iran. What the U.S. said is they don't want any ships either entering or exiting Iranian ports or Iranian coastal waters. So the U.S. will do this by likely standing off in the Gulf of Oman, but using their surveillance assets to determine what ships will go and come from those ports. And then if they're going to interdict them, they're going to be interdicting them likely in the Gulf of Oman. And they have the right forces, right boarding teams to do that if they have to board a ship. So I don't expect it to be confrontational, but I do expect it is effective. There were ships that were heading out of the Straits yesterday that were likely carrying an Iranian cargo. Two of them turned around. There's reports that one potentially went through. But when things start up like this, no blockades will be perfect. The idea is, are they effective? And operationally, you're not really going to see a change to the rest of flow out of the Straits of Hormuz because it wasn't moving anyway, although the U.S. says they're not going to interdict anything that's unrelated to going to or from an Iranian port.
Right. I want to play what Vice President Vance said last night about Iran and this U.S. blockade in the Strait. Let's listen.
What they have done is engage in this act of economic terrorism against the entire world. They basically threatened any ship that's moving through the Straits of Hormuz. Well, as the President of the United States showed, two can play at that game. And if the Iranians are going to try to engage in economic terrorism, we're going to abide by a simple principle that no Iranian ships are getting out either. We know that's a big deal to them.
Two can play at that game. He's talking about economic terrorism. Aaron, what do you make of Vance's comments?
Look, the blockade is a tactic. It's an instrument. It's not a solution to the problem. If, in fact, the objective of the administration is to deny Iran access to hard currency, which would cause hyperinflation, they can't import it, they can't pay for things. And if the strait is blocked, they can't export their oil. So the question is whether or not this tactic, coercion, will what? Maybe the president still hopes it'll fracture the regime. I guess the question is whether or not weeks from now, because I don't think this is not a weak tactic. It's going to have to endure for some time, whether or not this softens Iran's position at the negotiating table. And I only point out that in 2020, Iran's oil production went from almost 2 million barrels a day to 400,000. And the Iranians managed to endure and to survive. So the question, who can handle the most pain? The U.S. and the global economy or Iran? That's the question on the issue of the blockade, I think, with respect to its effectiveness.
David, what do we know about the talks this morning between Israel and Lebanon being held here in Washington?
As you said earlier, they're the first talks in decades, and both Lebanon, the countries don't recognize each other. There's been constant tensions, largely due to clashes between Hezbollah and the IDF. They are low-level talks. I just want to be realistic. These are these ambassadors to each country that are meeting. Secretary of State Rubio is going to attend. So it's a step forward. The problem is that Hezbollah has said it, is opposed to these talks and has said it will keep fighting Israel. And then Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu has also said Israel will continue attacking Hezbollah. So it's a good, significant step forward. It's good that Secretary Rubio is going to attend personally, but there's no sense it'll lead to an immediate ceasefire. Yeah. It could lay the groundworks, though, for maybe more serious talks in the days and weeks ahead.
You point out expectations sound very low for these talks. An admiral, a spokesperson for the UN Secretary General, said, quote, "It is clear that there is no military solution in the Middle East right now." Do you agree with that assessment? Can military might force change?
Well, I think we've seen over time that, military is not how you come to closure on a conflict. The military is an instrument, as was mentioned earlier, and this blockade is another one of the tools that the military can bring to bear. But in the end, the conflict's going to have to be resolved at the negotiating table or by diplomacy.